So just a quick little video just to show you how to shoot at night on an autofocus 90s, early 2000s film camera. This in particular is a Minolta Dynax 5, a mid-range Minolta from the early 2000s. Very inexpensive camera these days. This camera was bought for under £15, so you know, very, very cheap. Anyone can get into this, shooting this beautiful, beautiful cathedral in Bulgaria. We're just in Sofia. So, tried and tested method with this. We're using lomography 800 ISO film. When my phone camera decides to focus, which it always doesn't because it's got a crack in it. There we go. So, a lot of people think shooting at night on film, you use a low f-stop. That is completely wrong. You want to shoot as much detail as you can, especially with something like this. You know, it's a very intricate building. There's a lot of detail. It's got gold roof, lots of different colours and everything else, and we want to make those pop. We want some really, really sharp and bright colours. So, what I do is I shoot as high f-stop as I possibly can, which is, on this particular lens, is f/27. This lens that we're using is a 11 to 18mm Konica Minolta lens. It's not particularly low f-stop. The lowest it will go on 18mm is f5.6. Down to 11 we go to f4.5. So again, not a low light lens at all. Right, let's get into the shooting. Pretty straightforward. So we are on an 8-second exposure. What a lot of people get confused with shooting at night is the reciprocity setting. Reciprocity is basically the time, basically as you expose film for longer, it becomes less sensitive to light, which means that you have to compensate for that by exposing for longer than you should do. So what we do, instead of calculating the reciprocity, which can be a real mind boggle and get a lot of people really, really confused, is on the side of the camera here, and all cameras have this, doesn't matter if it's a manual focus, autofocus, whatever it is, they have this little button here. I don't know if you can see that. Let me try and zoom in on that. There we go. So you see a plus and a negative there. Sometimes it says AV, sometimes it doesn't. That is the exposure compensation button. So by pressing that, you see here it says plus 1.5. So that means I'm overexposing by 1.5 stops on an 8-second exposure. That is more than enough on an 8-second exposure. If I was to expose by, let's say, 1 second or 2 seconds, we'd go down to maybe half a stop. So we'd press that button, scroll it down. Let's see if we can do it one-handed. So scroll it down to half a stop. So that would be more than enough for a 1-second exposure, all the way up to a 30-second exposure where I would overexpose by 3 stops. This gives the film a little bit more time to become light sensitive. So now let's have a look. So we're overexposing by 3 stops. That is way, way over for this shot, but you can see there now it's giving me a 20-second exposure time. The shutter speed is 20 seconds. If I scroll back down to 1.5, we've got an 8-second exposure. This is really, really important. If you don't get that right, you will end up with an underexposed image. Now, I always say I'd rather be slightly overexposed than slightly under, especially with something like this that's nice and bright. So basically, that's it. That's the process. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. And if you stick by that method, you will get decent night shots every single time. Other thing that is important is obviously your tripod. Now, again, this tripod isn't very expensive. I've had various different tripods over the years, and this is a really, really good buy. These Cobra tripods are very inexpensive. They were made in probably the late 80s or early 90s. They're very, very sturdy. They've got a level on here, spirit level, both sides, so you can get a nice level shot. And I highly recommend them. These can be bought off eBay for like, I don't know, £5 to £15 max. They're all metal, nice latch on the back, really, really good quality. And the other thing is, I don't know if you've noticed, but my bag is hanging off here. That's not just to keep it safe. That is to weigh the tripod down in heavy winds. We haven't got any real wind here, but it's just a precaution. Obviously, it keeps your bag safe as well, so nobody's going to run up behind you and grab your bag. But yeah, weigh the tripod down. Remember your exposure compensation. Shoot on a high f-stop and use a high ISO film. And that is basically the recipe to get a good shot. Only other thing that I can think of to probably tell you is if your camera has got it, again, all late sort of film cameras will have this, is your timer. If you've got it, use it, because even just pressing the shutter release can make the camera shake a tiny amount, which will be enough to get a slight blur on your image. You won't get a crisp image. So timer, high f-stop, exposure compensation for your reciprocity, weigh your tripod down, and that's it. Don't need an expensive camera, don't need an expensive tripod. This whole kit is about 30 quid. It's not a lot, bar the lens. The lens is quite an expensive lens, but in my bag I've got the kit lens, which I've been using most of the night for a lot of my shots. Absolutely fine. It's a 28-100 f3.5, more than enough for what we need. And said I use the autofocus setting. It's got a really good autofocus setting on these minoltas, and I'm just shooting in aperture priority. I'm not on full manual. I know a lot of you will probably say, oh, why are you not using full manual? Because on these cameras, aperture priority is pretty good. It's pretty reliable. I've had good results with it, and I don't see any point of shooting full manual when the aperture priority is as reliable as it is. Same with the autofocus system. These have got a 12-point autofocus system in them. You can adjust through with these two buttons on the back. You've got an AF and a spot button. You can adjust through which point you want to focus on. I've been focusing on that second window down, which I don't know if you can see is that one there, sort of bang in the middle of the image. But because we're using such a high f-stop, we won't get any bokeh off this. It will all be in focus. So that's, again, one more thing. Low f-stop means bokeh. Night shots, we don't want bokeh, especially not if we're shooting buildings or landscapes. If you're doing a portrait image, absolutely fine. But for this, that's not what we're looking for. So, nice cheap little minolta Dynax 5. These are a goated camera in my opinion. All this era of minolta, they were packing them full of technology. It pretty much is a digital camera that you put a film in the back. It has got so many built-in features, and yeah, if you can find one of these, definitely worth the buy.